Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, selamat datang. Welcome to the first panel discussion of the International Conference on Digital Diplomacy, where we will be dwelling in the topic, Inclusive Digital Economy, Benefits and Challenges. I'm Timothy Marbun, and it is an honor for me to be your moderator for our first panel discussion today. Our event will be conducted online and also offline. We have a very limited attendance number here at the venue, with rigorous social distancing rules applied, and every participant and also the organizers have been gone through a COVID swab test and have been tested negative. Therefore, please allow me to continue with my mask off. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, looking back on the regional conference on digital diplomacy that we held in 2019, it's safe to say that in hindsight, we are in a place where we could never have predicted before, not only about COVID, but just how COVID has sped us up in so many areas, most notably in adopting digital approaches in so many aspects in life, not to mention diplomacy as well. Now, as a reporter in the field, I have witnessed firsthand how diplomacy did not give up, nor did it even slow down due to the pandemic. Now, taking Indonesia as an example and its presidency in the UN Security Council just last year, the global pandemic did not stop Indonesia from carrying out 50 activities, producing 4 resolutions and also 3 statements during its tenure. Now, we realize this all took extra efforts from all diplomats, from all the member countries, and a whole new approach of lobbying and communicating. Now, it's the same people, different methods, new technology. Now, regarding on topic on inclusive digital economy, at this point of the pandemic, many countries have already fixated their mindset on recovery and rebound. If anything, this is because that is what the people want most, and everyone wants to be a part of it, hence inclusivity. Now, the one approach we can take to make sure everyone affected by the economic downturn of the pandemic can get back on track. Now, how can we do this? This is where our short talk today will get exciting. Now, allow me to invite our speakers in this panel discussion. With 30 years of experience in the financial services industry, Mr. Srihong is now known for his extensive works in leading successful transformation programs for organizations, especially in the context of digital disruption. He is now a board member and senior advisor to CEOs, executive teams, and boards of directors in a number of public and private companies. We welcome to our screen the chairman of Digital Economy Promotion Agency, or DEPA, Thailand, Mr. Teeranun Srihong. How are you, Mr. Srihong?
I'm fine, very fine. Thank you very much. It's
okay, I think you're still muted.
Day in Bangkok now.
Oh, beautiful day in Bangkok. That's great to hear. Beautiful day here too. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Srihong. Our second speaker, Mr. Liivak, is the head of marketing and PR at Fortumo, at a payments and marketing platform that connects global merchants with local payment methods, focusing on mobile operator billing and mobile wallet payments. Now, in his role, Mr. Liivak aims to bring knowledge about local consumers and their expectations to merchants, as well as educate local payment method providers on the need of the global companies. Welcoming to your screen, the head of marketing Fortumo Estonia, Mr. Mattias Liivak. How are you, Mr. Liivak?
How are you? Good morning and good afternoon and good evening. It's cloudy in Estonia, so unfortunately not very good weather.
Okay, but hopefully it's warm enough for you there. So thank you once again for joining us, Mr. Liivak. Our next speaker represents the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, or UNCTAD. Ms. Sirimanne, please excuse me if I have mispronounced your name. Ms. Sirimanne has extensive experience in development policy, research, and technical cooperation gained from international organizations, national governments, think tanks, and also universities. She serves as the head of the Secretariat of the UN Commission of Science and Technology for Development, and now leads UNCTAD's work on e-commerce and digital economy. We welcome the Director of the Division on Technology and Logistics of UNCTAD, Ms. Shamika Sirimanne. How are you, Ms. Sirimanne? I think you're still muted. Ms. Sirimanne, can you hear me? Okay, I cannot hear your voice yet, but I'm sure that we could resolve that very soon. We hope you're well, Ms. Sirimanne. Now, our fourth speaker is responsible for managing and delivering technology solutions, strategy and performance, quality management, excellence, enterprise architecture, and portfolio management functions. With more than 20 years of professional experience, she has led key city strategic initiatives, the recent one being Invest in Dubai, Dubai Paperless Strategy, and ICT City Architecture, all of which contribute significantly towards the digital transformation of the world-renowned city. We welcome on the screen Director of Strategy and Innovation, Dubai Digital Authority, Dr. Moza Suwaidan. Dr. Suwaidan, how are you?
Hello, I'm fine, thank you, and thank you for having me today.
Thank you very much for your time with us today. Now, thank you once again to all our speakers for making the time to join us today. All our speakers will have the chance to share their analysis and their thoughts regarding our topic through their perspective of their respective fields. Now, each speaker will be given 7 minutes. Now, these 7 minutes are not mandatory, so feel free to end it earlier if you see necessary. But please also allow me to remind each speaker during the session when your time is running out. Now, I also invite all participants to submit your questions. You could do that through the chat box at any part of our session, and we will gather these questions, and I will be reading out your questions in the Q&A session we will have later on. Now, we're moving on to the first presentation and analysis. Therefore, I would like to give the screen to Mr. Teeranun Srihong. The screen is yours.
Excellencies, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to have the opportunity to share Thailand's digital economy agenda before you. My name is Teeranun Srihong. I'm the chairman of Digital Economy Promotion Agency, or DEPA, in Thailand. At DEPA, we are a government promoter for digital economy under the Ministry of Digital Economy and Society, which branches across the country. I'm not sure, are you playing the slide also? Can you hear me?
Okay, we're trying to bring up your slides here, Mr. Srihong. If you would just give us a couple of seconds. Okay, I think it's up now.
Is the sound okay?
Okay.
Did you get the sound?
Can you see it? Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay.
And is the sound okay? Thank you.
Mr. Srihong, if I may, your voice actually is not really clear for us here.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, much better. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. I changed this one then. Okay. Thank you very much, Excellencies, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure for me to have an opportunity to share Thailand's digital economy agenda before you. My name is Teeranun Srihong. I'm chairman of Digital Economy Promotion Agency, or DEPA. Next slide, please. At DEPA, we are a government promoter of digital economy under the Ministry of Digital Economy and Society. And we have branches all across the country. Next slide. Since July 2020, like many other countries, Thailand has also been affected by COVID-19, with the economy being aggravated by the third and fourth waves of the pandemic. Amid this economic downturn, adaptability and flexibility has then become very important key for SMEs, mid and micro SMEs, workforces, and all other sectors to survive the crisis. Our economy and social challenges is how we push business sectors to a new economy, and also citizens to gain necessary skills to earn income and grow in the new normal and the next normal world. So DEPA has adjusted itself to fight with these challenges. Based on our existing digital economy promotion master plan, we have 4 strategies. from building digital manpower, promoting digital transformation, empowering digital community, and building digital ecosystems. The first in the agenda today is about digital manpower. Next slide, please. Accelerated by the COVID-19 pandemic, the adoption of digital economy in all industry is needed, resulting in requiring workforce to get reskilled, upskilled, and also acquiring new skills at a faster speed. So for DEPA, we promote and encourage all groups of people to learn digital skills, starting from kids, workforce, to aging people, and also the vulnerable group, like people with disabilities. For the young generations, we equip them, next slide, we equip them with new skills like coding in schools, and also outside schools. Next slide, the next two slides. Okay, and for the workforce, we focus on reskilling and upskilling trainings. And we have organized several courses, like the digital CEO for the top executives, the young digital CEOs for the up and coming small and medium sizes and startups, and also the chief of digital agro business program, which aim at the agro business sector. We also train and upskill workforces in the most demanding fields like big data. Next slide, please. Big data, AI, IoT, automation, and cybersecurity. And also here we have worked with universities to develop digital manpower in AI, IoT, data science for public and private sectors in the Eastern Economic Corridor or EEC area. This project is called the Digital Economy Thailand or DET. Last but not least, is about the senior people. Next slide. We also encourage senior citizens to use digital technologies, from creating a safe internet awareness to teaching basic digital skills and helping them earning extra income using technologies, like setting up e-commerce businesses, or even helping in some of the analytical, data analytical skills. The next agenda is about digital transformation on the next slide. DEPA aims to transform industry in real sectors like agricultural sectors, manufacturing, SME, and tourism, promoting them to adopt technologies and take advantage of the technologies to reduce operating expenses and gain more revenues. Especially during this time, the digital technology have become even more advantageous. Next slide. So through our measures, digital support local businesses, farmers, and also communities to use digital technologies for their business and better quality of life. Next slide. We have matched the right technologies provided by our startup partners that are available in the market with those who need help. So we do a matching from startups to the business that needs those digital capabilities. Next slide. For examples, these are one examples in agricultural business. We introduced drone and IoT to farmers. The sector we call smart farmers. We also provide the ERP or enterprise resource planning, automations, and packaging technology for local communities. So in one of our successful projects in Chachen Sao, next slide, we bring drones to farmers, and by doing that, we reduce harm from chemical fertilizers, which they need to do it manually in the past. And in return, they're also getting better yields in their farming products. And lastly, the last agenda today is about our aim to build digital ecosystem with the right infrastructures on the next slide. We are creating what we call the Thailand Digital Valley, or TDV, located in the EEC areas of Thailand. The TDV digital valleys aim to provide the necessary infrastructures, digital ecosystem, and business matching services between large tech company and startups. In the TDV, next slide, we have 5 buildings. Our plans, we have 5 buildings. The constructions of TDV1, the first building, has been completed, which right now companies are fully moving in. The TDV2, the second building, is under construction with approximately 90% progress, and almost 100% spot in the building has already been reserved by tech companies and also digital startups. And the 3 remaining buildings are under further construction plans throughout several years of our plan to build these infrastructures. You move forward, please. These are some project timelines. So we plan to complete all the buildings and infrastructure in these facilities by 2024. Next slide. Investors and companies that are operating or coming into TDV would get a lot of incentives, right? For example, the tax and non-tax incentive through the one-stop service provided by Board of Investments and DEPA, and also participating on this. And they can look for things like tax exemption for corporate and personal income taxes. For the workers in the TDV and also for other digital workers, we are providing what we call Smart Visa program in the next slide. And the Smart Visa program provide extended stay period without the need for renewal. So right now we have attracted more than 100 digital talents into the country. That's been slowed down a bit by the pandemic, but we hope that once things start getting together, that would become quite popular among the digital talents. They would be provided a lot of incentives and also less hurdles in terms of the immigrations into the countries and moving in and out of the countries. So in summary, the next slide, Thailand, like many other countries in the world, is experiencing exponential rate of digital transformation since the outbreak of COVID-19. DEPA recognized these situations as an opportunity to accelerate the digital transformation in Thailand. So we are trying to be very flexible to respond to rapid pace of change. We have come to when everyone must use digital to survive, especially in the real sectors that are customers of digital service providers. So we are determined to join hands with our public and private partners, both domestic and international, to lead Thailand through economic crisis with digital technologies and innovation in all dimensions, both economically and socially. And we hope this effort will bring benefit, both not just for Thailand, but for other countries in ASEAN as well. So this is the end of my presentation. Please feel free to ask me here or later if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Srihong, for your presentation. Hopefully we could dwell more inside that, and we could ask some questions to those in the audience. If you have a question, please write them in the Q&A column right now. Now, moving on to Mr. Mattias Liivak. So you have 7 minutes. The time is yours.
All right. Hello again. So I work at a company called Fortumo. We're an Estonian payments company doing business in more than 80 countries across the world. And in Indonesia, for example, we process payments with both a Swedish company called Spotify and a local company called Video. So these are video streaming services and music streaming services. And to do that, we work with local mobile operators such as Indosat and local mobile wallet providers such as OVO. And our goal is to make access to the digital economy as simple as possible for both companies and the people who are buying goods and services from these companies. So we sit in the middle of a very international mix of companies, their customers, and local payment providers. And that means that we see quite a lot in terms of what the needs and challenges of all the three parties in the digital economy are. In order for a digital economy to thrive, there needs to be a way for money to move digitally as quickly and securely as possible. Local entrepreneurs create new ventures, and international companies do business in countries where they see that there is an opportunity to make money. And having accessible online payment methods is a crucial part of this. So if you look at the Western digital economy, then the infrastructure, the payments infrastructure of this economy is almost 70 years old. Credit cards and the online payment processing they enable were invented in the 1950s. Since most consumers with access to the digital economy in the past used to live in Western Europe and North America, these are the main payment solutions used by most of the companies involved in the digital economy today, whether it's Western or Asian or African or wherever else. But the next billion people moving to the middle class and becoming a part of the digital economy are not coming from Europe or United States, but so-called emerging markets where these traditional payments infrastructure is lacking. If we look at data from the World Bank's Global Financial Inclusion Database, the difference in access to online payments is actually quite drastically different. So for example, in Finland, 99.8% of people have a bank account, in the US 93%. In Indonesia, the number of bank accounts stands at 49%, while in Egypt, for example, it's at 33%. So there is a 2 to 3-fold difference in having access to a bank account. And the ownership of credit cards is even more drastic between mature and emerging economies. The US and Finland have around 65% of people owning a credit card. Indonesia and Egypt have between 2 to 3% of credit card owners across the whole population. So that's actually a 20-fold difference. So if bank account ownership in emerging economies is 2 times lower and credit card ownership is 20 times lower, how can companies and people participate in the digital economy? And nature does not like empty space. So the gap created by traditional payments infrastructure, which is lacking in these markets, has kind of been circumvented by new technologies. Firstly, smartphones make access to the digital economy available for everyone. US ownership of smartphones is 85%, in Finland it's 87%, in Indonesia it's 72%, in Egypt it's 54%. So actually the gap in terms of access to the digital economy through smartphones is only in double-digit percentages, not several times. And because people have access to the digital economy through their smartphones, but they do not have access to the payment methods of the past, these Western payment methods, new local solutions have popped up. These are stored value mobile wallets, which are hugely popular across Africa and Asia and growing in the Middle East and Latin America. And these have taken over the dominant role as payment methods in the digital economy. So one of the companies we work with, Juniper Research, which does research on the digital economy, forecasts that today 23% of Indonesians have a mobile wallet account. And this is forecast to grow to 74% in the next couple of years. In Egypt today, 20% of people have a mobile wallet account, and it's forecast to grow to 57% by 2025. So Americans and Europeans have credit cards, and in a few years, the same proportion of Indonesians and Egyptians will have access to online payments through their mobile wallet accounts. So it seems like the problem is solved. Everyone is included in the digital economy, but that's quite not the case. The main challenge is that very often the access to the digital economy is local. For example, these new mobile wallets are used for purchases in local stores and with local digital economy merchants, but not global ones. So local consumers are transacting with local merchants, whereas in a perfect world, local consumers also would get access to global goods and services. Local companies could easily adapt these new payment methods for expansion into other countries, and international companies could easily adapt the local payment methods for entry into the specific markets they are interested in. And this is, I think, where governments and digital diplomacy can help. Payment solutions obviously need to be private and secure, but they also need to be easily accessible to companies to adapt. So I'm not an expert on policy. I work in a private organization, but the keywords I would highlight in terms of kind of the payments and policies around that are awareness, so that both consumers, local and international companies would use these new payment solutions. I would highlight transparent legislation and ease of doing business in a country, transparent and simple to understand taxation laws and processes. And for local companies looking to expand into other markets, there needs to be resources and information available for what they need to do if they are looking to go regional or global. So people globally want the same access to the digital economy. In the smartphone era, access itself has become quite equal across both mature and emerging economies. But what is today still a challenge is the ability to participate, that is being able to transact and make payments, which is the foundation of an economy. And while on a local country level, this participation has been solved thanks to the mobile wallets, internationally, there is still a long way to go. So to summarize, for policymakers, the keywords to follow are privacy, security, awareness creation, sustainable and transparent legislation and taxation, and providing both consumers and companies with resources and information to actually get involved in the digital economy. So that's it from me.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Liivak. A very interesting perspective there that you've shared. And I guess I'll have to apologize that I'm not the only one in the room that have been using your services in Fortumo without noticing through those, at least through one of those applications that you've mentioned there today. So thanks, that's new information for me. Thank you very much. Now moving on to Ms. Shamika Sirimanne. The time is yours. Ms. Sirimanne, can you hear me?
Thank you.
Okay.
Because I cannot unmute myself. I think
see.
somebody has to do it from your side. So
Apologies
thank you for doing
that.
And very good afternoon, all the participants, and very good to be here and in this very important seminar. I think you need to do a lot more in digital diplomacy to make sure that this digital transformation will work for all and not just for a few. So I think many of the speakers already started talking about it, that the COVID-19 pandemic has been basically a wake-up call for many about the importance of digitalization. And since 2020, as after we all went into lockdowns, we have witnessed a surge in the use of digital solutions for teleworking, telemedicine, online education, communication, and so forth. And we believe that this trend will continue. And so we are seeing an accelerated transformation towards a digital space. But this digital shift is not without its challenges. Despite rapid uptake of digital technologies, significant divides remain. And I think in Indonesia, you probably see the urban-rural divide. And this also happens across countries. And if you look at the least developed countries of the world, only 1 in 5 people uses internet. And in most of them, well below 5% of the population shop online. And insufficient quality of broadband services is also hampering their ability to connect to this emerging digital economy. And plus, in most the poorest countries, it is exorbitantly expensive to have an internet subscription. So you see, we undertake at UNCTAD a thing called a service called e-trade readiness assessments. And we go and assess countries' readiness to engage in the e-commerce and the digital economy. And we find that the problems are not just infrastructure, meaning connectivity, but as this previous speaker mentioned, there are a lot more needs to be done to have the payment solutions, skills, and legal frameworks to be in place. So to overcome many challenges that people have to connect to the digital economy and benefit fully from this emerging world. You know, I think it's fair to say that digitalization affects our ability to reach virtually all of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that we all have pledged to fulfill by 2030. And take the case of the well-being of children, opportunities for women, the global food system, global health, the world of work, you know, they are all connected to the digital space. So it's extremely important to understand the importance of this general purpose technology. And basically it's a technological revolution. So now then it begs the question, what can be done so that everybody you know, can benefit from digitalization and to make digitalization more inclusive? I think this is the topic of this session. Now, I just also here, I want to also put to you this very important thing that's emerging, that the differences in digital readiness and the high concentration of market power in the digital economy call for new policies and governance aimed at ensuring a fair distribution of the gain from this digital disruption. And when you look at the digital platform, it's only 2 countries basically own 90% of the largest platforms, digital platforms in the world. It's the United States of America and China. And it's the same if you look at the AI research, and it is these 2 countries dominate the world in, you know, working on the artificial intelligence. And if you look at patents in this emerging digital world, and they are mostly owned by the 2 countries. So it's basically the US, China, and then you have the rest of the world. So how do we make sure that this technological revolution is inclusive for all? I think the previous speaker mentioned the policy, the governments have a role to play. The governments do have an enormous amount of work to do. And for example, handling and regulation of digital data are complex as they touch upon human rights, trade, economic value creation and capture, law enforcement and national security. So formulating policies that take all these various dimensions into account is very hard for countries to do, but this needs to be done. If you want to build trust on the digital world, trust on platforms, trust on internet, you need to have the basic regulatory frameworks. If we want to engage in international trade, we need to have you know, secure payment systems established. So what we need to see at the national level is all the ministries, all the stakeholders needs to come together, because the digital is not a business of one ministry. It is not the business of ICT ministry, or because we are talking about e-commerce, it's not the business just of the trade ministry. And this is the business where the regulators need to sit in the table with all these different ministries, the ICT, trade, your central banks, because they are the ones who deal with payment systems, and the private sector, especially the young people who are leading, you know, this revolution. The digital, most of the digital entrepreneurs are young, and this is a technology of young people. So these young entrepreneurs, the private sector needs to be in this room. When you couch out for a national strategy to benefit from the digital economy. Now, as I said earlier, there are many things that you cannot do at the national level. There are things that you need to do at regional or global level. This applies to data protection and security, cross-border data flows, competition and trade. And taxation in the digital economy is another area that has to be resolved at the international level. And any agreement will need to incorporate significant flexibilities to enable all countries to be comfortable. And this is a concern we have in UNCTAD, because I don't know whether you all know about UNCTAD. This is the United Nations focal point on trade and development. And we were created in 1964 to serve developing countries. It's a very special body created by developing countries. so that to help developing countries to integrate into the world market. And that business is not finished yet. And that business becomes a lot more complicated as the economy and trade, finance, they all become digital. So I am very happy to see that G20 is led by Indonesia, and Indonesia being a developing country and being in the forefront of many issues that are important for development. And it is my request or the plea to all of you to pay attention to the digital and development. And a lot needs to be done to make sure that this unveiling revolution in front of our eyes is going to work for all of us, not just for few and not just for few platforms. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sirimanne, for highlighting some very important points that needs our attention here and also in the future. Now, I'm moving on to Dr. Moza Suwaidan. So, Dr. Suwaidan, you have 7 minutes. Time is yours.
Sure. Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me today. Hopefully, in the next few minutes, I'll be sharing with you our journey in digital transformation in the Emirate of Dubai. I work for Dubai Digital Authority. We are the government entity responsible for the digital transformation of the city of Dubai. While the slides are becoming available here, the digital transformation journey basically started 20 years ago. We are a very young country, considered, young generation. Our population is around 10 million. Majority of the population is actually youth. We started the transformation 20 years ago, back in 2000, with the announcement of e-government. Next slide, please. And since then, we've been actually going through multiple milestones, moving from e-government to mobile government, where the mandate became having government services available on the palm of your hand through mobile and smartphones. And then we moved into becoming a smart government as well, where our government operations and services are offered through digital channels. And then the bar went higher, and the leadership of Dubai requested that we look into smart city concepts back in 2015, in which we are not only digitizing the government, we are trying to enable the city towards becoming a digital city and really becoming a competitive and a regional hub for such a transformation. Moving forward to the recent announcement in 2021, where Digital Dubai Authority was formed with a very specific mandate, in fact, is to digitize life in Dubai. Next slide, please. So we're no longer talking about digital services or digitizing processes, and that has been done and dusted probably in the last 20 years, in which we have built a very robust digital ICT infrastructure in the city. We're now talking about digitizing life in Dubai. And if you think about the word life, it means a lot of aspects and a lot of inclusion of every single person who lives in the Emirate of Dubai, being citizens or residents or even visitors as well. So how do we do that? We have identified 7 main pillars. Next, please. In which Digital Dubai are currently working on to enable that transformation and digitizing life in Dubai. So the first pillar being digital government, we continue our role in digitizing the government, improving our efficiency, because we truly believe, before we go out and demand, digital economy to evolve and thrive in the city, we as a government have to be efficient as well in our processes, in our governance models, in our regulation, and so on. The second pillar being the digital economy itself. So we see a major role for the government, as my colleague speaker have been mentioning, that the government plays a major role in improving and actually driving the digital economy in the city. And probably I'll give you a few examples of that later on. And of course, with moving towards becoming a digital city, there is the society aspect that we need to also cater for. We need to create digital society, giving them the right tools and skills to make use of technology and thrive and grow with the city and with the economy as well. And of course, the digital infrastructure is one aspect of our mandate. We manage the ICT infrastructure in the city. We make sure that it is available. The connectivity is a big part of what we do as well with all the stakeholders from the government and private sector as well. And of course, data and statistics becomes a major aspect of our transformation, in which we use data for decision making. And of course, all of us have been witnessing how data become crucial during the pandemic that we all went through. Digital skill is one aspect that we are also focusing on, in which we are trying to upskill and reskill our community and even our government workforce to really be able to be future proof when it comes to transforming and utilizing the different technologies and platforms available. And of course, with all that becomes available and accessible, security becomes a big part of also what we focus on, cybersecurity in particular, and how do we make sure that the data and our IT assets are protected overall. Next, please. And our role to cater for all of these different pillars, we as a government see ourselves playing 4 major roles. And probably this model can actually be also implemented in any government in the world. So a government, an entity that regulates or work in the area of digital transformation of the city, should play a leader role when it comes to setting the agenda of digital transformation, making sure that the direction is set, the goals and targets are achievable, and also challenging enough for the growth of the city. We play a role of regulator, so we regulate and work on regulatory framework, policies and laws and standards to enable the transformation and make sure that everything aligned for the growth to happen on a very fast pace. We also operate, so our job is also to offer platforms and applications for the citizens, for the businesses and different personas and different segments of the community through shared services. And of course, we enable as well. The government will not be able to implement everything, so we provide the ecosystem and the tools to enable the other sectors, being government or private sector. Next slide, please. So what do we do in terms of the digital economy in particular? We work on improving or increasing the productivity through digital solutions and platforms. Next slide. So we provide digital solutions and platforms for different sectors, for different purposes. We are responsible of building and enabling digital ecosystem and maintaining and growing the city infrastructure, the ICT infrastructure in particular. We also spend or invested a lot in digitizing services and digitizing operations and providing seamless experiences around the city, looking at all aspects of life of the citizens. And of course, creating an ecosystem for those businesses and entrepreneurs to thrive and to build their own future, starting from Dubai to the global markets as well. I have very few examples that I'm going to go through very quickly on those platforms and solutions that enabled us to transform the government and the city in particular. Next slide talks about the government, creating government efficiency through a centralized system in which we manage all our government operations through it, which is an ERP solution. It is now used by more than 70 government entities. More than 71,000 employees of the government are using one central system to manage their finance, supply chain, and human resources, asset management, and so on. The next example on the next slide talks about one of the initiatives in which we have also worked on transforming the government through Dubai paperless strategy. We have been working digitizing services, but we also thought, we need to be 100% digital from the inside out. And this strategy came about to actually eliminate paper, redesigning, re-engineering our processes, digitalizing the experiences end to end, and achieving zero paper in the government. And the announcement is due to happen 12 December 2021, which is less than a month from now. The following example, next slide, basically talks about how do we provide services and provide access to government services through channels. So we have Dubai Now application. It has more than 130 services available from more than 30 government entities, and this mobile application is available for free. Citizens can actually use it to obtain any government service that they might be interested in. The following example and the next slide is basically taking care of the businesses in Dubai. So we also provided, as a government, provided a platform in which investors can come and obtain a trade license, open a business in Dubai with zero visits to the government entities, going through the journey from end to end, from obtaining the license, getting their, having the right documents to actually hire people, opening bank accounts, being a member in the Dubai chapter, and so on. And this platform basically enabled an accelerated growth in terms of businesses operations in Dubai. The last example that I would like to share with all of you in the next slide is basically one of the key enabler for digital transformation, which is our digital. And the idea here is all the citizens of Dubai should be able to authenticate themselves and make themselves known to the government to leverage and use the government services available to everyone. Just one thing to mention here is we are a population of 10 million. We have a very, very high internet penetration, around 9.8 million of citizens and residents and visitors in Dubai actually have access to the internet, very high mobile subscription as well. And this kind of high adoption of services of technology enable us to move forward with the transformation. And the last thought that I would like to share with you today in the very last slide of my presentation is around, it's about time for the digital transformation, the investment that we've been making for the last 20 years. Next slide, please. Is about time to actually make use of it in terms of developing the economy and really making the everyone who lives in Dubai thrives and have an opportunity to grow with the city as well. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moza, Suwaidan, for your presentation. Thank you very much, everyone, for conveying your message here today. Notice that I did not cut anybody here because I found every presentation here that all our speakers have presented to be very insightful. And although we have very limited time now, I actually have questions for all the speakers, but I would like to give the chance to the audience who have submitted their questions to go with their questions first. While we wait for that, I could probably ask some questions. Now, we only have a very limited time. I would appreciate it very much if you can answer the question within probably 1 minute. I know that is a lot to ask, I guess, considering a lot of these questions should be addressed in a very more comprehensive way. But I'll go to here. It's just a simple question for everyone, but I'd like to know your perspective on these different angles. So I'm just going to go from Mr. Srihong first and move on through our speaker list to Mr. Liivak and also Ms. Sirimanne and also Ms. Suwaidan. Now, I'm just going to address one, I guess, barrier or a problem or challenge that we will be facing in digital economy in the future. Now, these are all taken from your talking points. I'll go first with Mr. Srihong. If you would just address to us about what your suggestions and approach would be to address it, on how we could implement the education sector to be more ready for the digital economy. And we're not talking only about adding the education as a supplementary, adding the digital economy knowledge just as a supplementary to the formal education, but really making it an integral part of educating our young today to be prepared for the future and making that a part of their formal education. Do you see that in Thailand, or what can be done about that?
Yeah, I think we're starting down that part, but there are several issues in the education systems that we might need to address. I'll give you examples. You look at a lot of schools today, most of the teachers are actually spending a lot of time in doing more of the administrative and management work rather than teaching. And that comes down to the efficiencies of the schools or the ability of the schools to use the digital technologies to improve their efficiencies. That will be one very key thing also for like the schools in the government sectors that still having this kind of problems, right? So one way is actually starting to helping schools doing that, right? The IT side, how the school would embrace digital technologies, right? Secondly, I think this COVID-19 has actually given us an opportunity to relook at giving digital offering as a secondary or as a alternative way for students to start to learn. But if you look at that, we also need to address the issues around how we get devices to the students, especially for the students from the family that may not have a high income, for example, and so that they can use those kind of tools to start accessing the knowledge outside, right? Or we can start, once the devices are in the hands of the students, we can start looking at how we can get the top teachers to maybe teaching 1,000 or 10,000 students at one time, or be on the record, for example. So I think there are a lot of opportunities, but we need to look at each one of them carefully because they all have challenges on how you can implement or roll that out.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Srihong. Now, moving on to Mr. Liivak. Now, my question for you is about security. You operate across borders. Now, different countries may have different standards or capabilities when we talk about these security issues. Now, how would you like to address this, and what would be the plan in the future, or what do you see would be the best roadmap to tackle this problem?
Well, I think there is kind of a blueprint if we are already looking at consumer privacy and security. Then with in the US there is the COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Act. In Europe we have GDPR. I'm not saying that kind of these frameworks are perfect or the international organizations.
We lost you for a second there. Mr. Liivak. Okay, I think we lost connection.
Am I back?
Okay, you're back. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So I don't know where I was cut off, but essentially there are already blueprints from the US, from Europe in terms of GDPR and the COPPA and so on, which to look at and adopt into the local kind of needs and requirements, as obviously every region and country is different. So I would, again, I'm not a policymaker, but it makes sense to look at what's already been done across the world and how it has worked out, what's gone well, what to adapt and what to kind of leave aside, if that makes sense.
Does the lack of speed in regulation sometimes frustrate you, especially since you're in the financial sector, which really moves within the regulations in each country?
I think globally countries are on a very different level with this. Fundamentally, it's a question of having the transparency of having the information accessible in an easy to access manner, and actually understanding that when decisions are made, how long do they take, and at the end of the day, most problems and challenges are caused by communication. So having better communication is kind of the key around pretty much anything.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Liivak, for answering that. I'm moving on to Ms. Sirimanne. Now, I would like to know your take on when we're talking about inclusivity in the digital economy. How is probably the most ideal, or at least nearing to the ideal, cooperation between the government and the private sector, since both take part in trying to build this inclusivity in the digital economy in the future, and both have probably different motives in creating so?
Thank you very much. I think this is a very important question and probably not very easy answers. But as you said, it's extremely important that the private sector and government work together, because we are in it's an emerging world out there, and where the government has a role to play in basically creating an enabling environment, putting the infrastructure and making sure that the access to internet is of high quality and it is not exorbitantly expensive. And the governments have a role to play in bringing proper regulatory and legal frameworks so that we trust transactions on internet, because otherwise I have no trust on to put my credit card on the internet. And the government has a big role to work with the private sector to build skills. We are not talking about doing frontier research and working on algorithms and artificial intelligence, but you need to have a certain amount of skills to create a platform and work on the platform and do things. So it's like a mid-level IT skills. And so there is that role. And then the entrepreneurs have to be the ones who take risk, because when you're starting a new business, you are endeavoring into a new risky area. And if the government creates a proper environment, the private sector would take this necessary risk to create new entrepreneurial opportunities. So I think it has to be work in hand in hand. And what we find in many countries that we work is that if you have a very clear digital strategy, outline in a very consultative process with the government, with the private sector, and with also some other parties in the room, and then it works. And then the digital economy will, the benefits of the digital economy will be available for the many. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sirimanne. I know that was not a 1-minute question. I guess you can't really answer that in 1 minute, but thank you very much for being succinct there with your points. Now, the next question is for Dr. Moza Suwaidan, which comes from the audience. So I'm just going to ask you a question from the audience. This is from Fitna Laila to Dr. Moza. The question is, are there any special tips and tricks for building an online or digital business like the one you built for students, so that students can learn business via digital from an early age? Dr. Moza?
Okay, thank you for the question. Basically, it's for you to really make use of the digital economy and build businesses in the area of e-commerce and e-business and so on. It's not only about building the platform. It goes beyond that. It goes from having the understanding of how the economy works and how can you leverage and build a business and thrive at the back of everything that is happening. So building a channel is one thing, and building a channel, to me, technology is the easiest thing to do. You can build a platform, you can create opportunities, and this is what we try to do also through Invest in Dubai, in which we are not only providing you with a service, but also giving you some information about sectors and what is the key statistics available through these sectors. So this is the education part, right? We're telling you there is an opportunity in here, and this is how you make it happen. This is how you apply for your business. This is how you operate it as well. So because it's about licensing part of your business and also the operation side. Continuous education for these businesses, and making sure that they are enabled through the different ingredients of digital economy. And I'm talking about from government perspective. There are ingredients that has to exist in a city or in a country to enable digital economy. One of those is having the right regulatory framework to enable those businesses to thrive. The other one is having a very clear digital transformation strategy and targets and goals that includes platforms, as per the question that came in addition to enabling services like digital identification, payment gateways, integration platforms, and so on. So to me, there is no one single answer. There is a lot of ingredients that comes into play. There is different roles from different parties at a country level. We exercise different roles at different times as a government. I mentioned in my presentations being leader, operator, or regulator, or an enabler. These are different roles we play at different times to really drive the digital economy in the city. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you very much for answering that question, Dr. Suwaidan. Now I have another question. This comes from Intan Kinanti from the University of Muhammadiyah, Kalimantan Timur. This question is for Ms. Sirimanne. The question is, as we know, in promoting an inclusive digital economy, the challenges faced are not only related to infrastructure aspects, but also related to human capacity. How to increase human capacity in the digital economy to reduce the human gap, because human capacity become an important issue, especially in developing countries, to face the digital economy. Ms. Sirimanne?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for this very, very important question, because most of the time when we talk about digital economy, people get stuck in connectivity. And yes, connectivity is an essential ingredient, because if you're not connected to the internet, you cannot do anything, but it's just one. And the skills play a very, very important role. And I think what we need to do, I mean, you know, especially in developing countries, our education systems are still the old education system. You know, we go into arts, become an engineer, or art, you know, we go into arts, and not so much the emphasis is played onto sciences and technology aspects. So we need to have an overhauling of entire curriculums from the high school to the university to create this labor force that is skilled enough to deal with the digital economy. And this is another role that the government has to do, but this is also a role that the private sector needs to have, this feedback loop between the government and the private sector. Private sector needs to give the signals where the labor force is, you know, what skills are necessary for the labor force. And then the governments and education ministries will have to, you know, totally overhaul the curriculums to include the STEM education in universities. And here I also want to put a marker that we also need to, when you get to the STEM education, the science, technology, engineering, medicine kind of education, we don't see many young women, especially in developing countries, going into these areas. This is yet another area that the governments need to pay a lot of attention to get women going into STEM education, not just finishing their degrees, but also being engaged in the labor markets once they finish the degree. So there is a big need, and there is a big hole in skills development.
Thank you very much. Now, I think we have a short time for one short answer, and this goes to Mr. Teeranun. This is from Dery P. Iskandar from the Indonesian Embassy in Khartoum. Now, Mr. Teeranun, for some countries, a good network may have been established, but in some other countries, this is still an obstacle. Now, how do we respond to this for a better inclusive digital economy? I think we just, Ms. Sirimanne just touched upon that connectivity is also one thing. So what would you say, Mr. Teeranun? Mr. Teeranun? Okay, Mr. Teeranun, let me just read you the question. This is from Dery Iskandar from the Indonesian Embassy in Khartoum. For some countries, Mr. Teeranun?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now I'll just read the question once again. For some countries, a good network may have been established, but in some other countries, this is still an obstacle. Now, how do we respond to this for a better inclusive digital economy? What would be your short answer, if you may?
Network, you mean from the infrastructures, right? The cabling?
Yes, the network, yeah.
Thailand has made a huge investment I think starting about 4 years ago. And we spent 2 years to roll that out. Right now, we got fiber optics to every single district in Thailand. Actually, about almost 30,000 connection points provided. And for the area that it's not feasible to lay down the wire, we're using the mobile phone connectivity. So we provide that to every villages. And right now we start deploying like the applications and also helping the community to start using that kind of infrastructure. So I think it needs the government leaderships on that. A big investment, but we have finished rolling that out just before the COVID-19 started. And we see a lot of communities start using that already. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Srihong. Now, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I would like to ask all participants to join us to watch this next video where we will have the chance to hear the ASEAN perspective on digital economy. Delivering the message is the ASEAN Secretary General, His Excellency Dato Lim Jock Hoi, in this pre-recorded video.
Her Excellency Ibu Ratno Masudi, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon and selamat siang. My appreciation to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia for inviting me to deliver the keynote speech. It was only last month that Indonesia co-hosted a United Nations General Assembly side event on a resilient and inclusive creative economy for a thriving future to much success. The convening of this business forum is a further manifestation of Indonesia's leadership and commitment in promoting the creative economy. With the themes of enhancing digital creative economy, a step towards regional economic recovery, the forum is also aligned with the broad strategies of the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework, particularly on strengthening human security and accelerating inclusive digital transformation. COVID-19 has upended the life of many of its, and it's crucial for us to utilize the SCRF and its implementation plan in charting our exit strategy from the pandemic. I'm positive that your deliberations today, this week, will be a welcome addition to the discourse and activities in advancing the region's post-pandemic recovery.
Remy, what about this
Excellencies,
meeting?
ladies and gentlemen, the potential of creative economy in Southeast Asia is immense. It accounts for a significant part of our people's life and is often seen as the nexus of various creative fields, including arts and culture, science and technology, business and trade. Notably, data from previous year have cited ASEAN as one of the 5 largest exporters of creative goods along the EU, US, and China. Moreover, from 2003 to 2015, ASEAN's trade in creative goods has grown substantially at an average annual growth rate of 11%. Much of this growth can be attributed to the contribution of the creative industry of Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. At the same time, some sectors within the creative economy are also ones that have been hit hardest by COVID-19 pandemic. The travel restriction and lockdown measures imposed across the region, cultural sites have largely been shut, live shows and concerts cancelled, and demand for handicraft declined as the number of tourists traveling to the regions have dropped sharply. UNESCO has estimated that there was a contraction of US $750 billion in gross value added generated by the cultural and creative industry globally in 2020 relative to 2019, which equates to an annual 1% of the global nominal GDP in 2019. This contraction may also be an underestimate because it does not account for spillover or indirect impacts. Small businesses, including those within the creative economy, has been particularly vulnerable to the impact of the pandemic. Due to their limited resources in managing the crisis, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as small and medium cultural and creative enterprises have been exposed to shock and uncertainties. During the pandemic, social distancing measures and control in the movement of people and goods caused disruption to the supply chain, retail businesses, firms, operation and demand. The risk is especially pronounced for the creative economy, as it's made up of many informal gig workers whose freelancers, self-employed, unskilled and short-term contracted workers are vulnerable to disruption. The consequences of the pandemic have not affected all creative economy industry evenly, with many of us adjusting to a new normal that entails staying and working from home. COVID-19 led to a sharp rise in the consumption of audiovisual and digital media streaming and content. Moreover, the pandemic has accelerated digital adoption. In 2020, over 40 million new users went online for the first time in Southeast Asia, outpacing the average increase of 25 million per year in the previous 4 years. Consequently, e-commerce has witnessed significant growth, with e-commerce revenue in ASEAN projected to reach more than 80 billion US by 2024. This surge in e-commerce and technological solutions during the pandemic presents an opportunity for creative economy as creative sector transform from their business model using digital technologies to adapt to a new normal. Digital technology is therefore a crucial enabler for the ASEAN creative economy. Access to digital technologies, especially the internet, can empower the most vulnerable with job opportunities and services, as well as access to information which will improve their living standard. In this regards, I am pleased to share the ASEAN is pivoting towards digital adoption and building a leading digital economy community by working towards the development of ASEAN digital economy by 2025 through the adoption of the ASEAN Digital Master Plan 2021-2025 and the Bandar Sri Begawan Roadmap on Digital Transformation. A convergence of digital economy and the creative economy alongside the development of the cultural and creative industry will reinforce the region's wide ecosystem for innovation and creativity. It will not only facilitate the movement of creative goods and services, but also provide an enabling environment for inclusive participation of all creative actors, especially MSME and SMCEs. On one regional initiative aimed at fostering inclusive growth of ASEAN MSME is the ASEAN SME Academy, especially established in 2016 through self-help and self-paced online learning tools. The Academy offers free resources on ASEAN context-specific as well as networking opportunity for MSME to upgrade their capacities. To this end, ASEAN is committed to furthering people-centered policy where opportunities are extended for greater development of education, science and technology, as well as to ensure the upskilling of cultural and creative workers. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, specific conditions and regulation are needed to create an enabling, safe and thriving environment for businesses and workers in the creative economy. On that note, I would like to highlight 4 key areas. First, we should look towards strengthening social protection for those working in the informal sectors of the creative economy, given the significant number of gig workers in the creative sector. Is important that adequate protection is provided so that they do not fall through the social safety net. For example, while cultural works is subject to equal opportunities policies and employment rights as enshrined in the 1980 recommendation concerning the status of the artist, this type of work is also defined by ILO as a non-standard or as much as it is a freelance, part-time or project-based, and therefore these rights and policy would not always be applied to creative occupation. Second, sustainable financing for creative and cultural industry is key to its further growth in contributing to the wider creative economy. Some sectors within the creative economy have traditionally relied on public financing for support as they are not considered to be profit-driven. Hence, we are now seeing a more alternative financing mechanism such as private-public partnership, angel investing, impact investing, and donation-based funding. It is important that creative and cultural industry are given access to such financing options. Third, ASEAN is leveraging on tourism sectors to unleash the potential of creative economy ecosystem while pursuing recovery in the region. The tourism sector integrates both commercial and cultural value of the creative economy, and it is a vehicle for empowering and generating the income for workers, rural communities, indigenous people. The success of the reopening of tourism sector will rejuvenate the landscape of the creative economy post-pandemic. In this regard, the endorsement of the post-COVID-19 recovery frame plan for the ASEAN tourism earlier this September and the operationalization of the ASEAN Travel Corridor Arrangement framework to facilitate essential travels are among a major step towards realizing this goal. Fourth, ASEAN recognizes the importance of building partnership to foster and support the development of an inclusive ecosystem for the creative economy. It is critical that we seek to partner with relevant external stakeholders to build knowledge, identify trends, gaps, and good practices. ASEAN will also continue to utilize the public-private partnership model to develop and promote accessible digital infrastructure and digital literacy. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the creative economy plays a unique role in promoting curative benefit to uplift the quality of life of people through the creative expression of arts and artists alike. The creative economy has the potential to shape societal norms and influence behavior changes. On that note, I'm pleased to share that the ASEAN Senior Officials Meeting for Culture and Arts is currently discussing the preparation of a ministerial declaration that will support the promotion and development of the cultural and creative industry, which will contribute to the wider creative economy. This discussion are also underway in determining the feasibility of a dedicated ASEAN Center to serve as the hub of research, capacity building, and networking for creative and cultural industries. ASEAN recognizes the potential of a resilient and inclusive creative economy in unlocking the innovative and creative powers of all 10 ASEAN member states. This goal could only be achieved through an inclusive process where all creative actors, including businesses, governments, consumers, industry, artists, and artisans, could play their parts and thrive together in an integrated ecosystem. I wish the forum a fruitful deliberation and discussion. Thank you.
A special thanks to the ASEAN Secretary General, His Excellency Dato Lim Jock Hoi, for taking part in our talks today. And as Our Excellency Minister Retno Marsudi also mentioned, that the ASEAN Creative Economy Business Forum also kicks off today until the 23rd of November in Bali as well. Now, I would like to thank all speakers, Mr. Teeranun Srihong, Mr. Mattias Liivak, Ms. Shamika Sirimanne, and also Dr. Moza Suwaidan. Thank you very much, all our speakers, for a very insightful discussion, and especially for your generous time with us today. We wish you the best of health and also success in your future plans. Thank you very much once again. We hope to see you again. Hopefully, we hope to see you here in Bali one day. Thank you very much. And also, I would like to thank all participants for your attention and also for engaging in our discussion. We hope the presentations and also statements that we've heard here in this panel discussion have provided you a better insight in foreseeing the direction of digital economy is taking and how it can be more and more inclusive for all. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite you to witness the closing ceremony of the ICDD 2021 through our YouTube channel, MOFA Indonesia, Ministry of Foreign Affairs Indonesia. Therefore, we will start the closing ceremony right after this panel. I'm Timothy Marbun. Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure moderating your panel today.